Welcome to Stormwatch by Grey Noise Intelligence. Each week, we drop the latest info on what's happening at Grey Noise, Census, and VulnCheck, take a look at a roundup of important and timely cybersecurity topics, toss out some expert opinions, and drop the occasional conspiracy theory. Today, we start off with a follow-up from last week's episode, specifically the Columbus, Ohio ransomware attack debacle. The city council is back from break and has added some fuel to the already blazing fire, and we're going to take a look at that. We then move it along to the TDECU, it's a credit union, MOVEit incident, where a third-party vendor used by them to transfer data was compromised by a bad actor. It exposed personal information for members, employees, and folks that transacted with them, including pretty much everything about them. And we're going to be focusing on one aspect of it, like the fact that it took 13 months to get disclosed. In our Cyber Spotlight segment, we're going to shine some light on the White House's new BGP roadmap, which is aimed at enhancing internet routing security. The roadmap addresses vulnerabilities in the Border Gateway Protocol, which is a foundational protocol that enables over 70,000 independent networks to operate as the internet. We discussed the key components of the roadmap, but we're going to go into a lot of detail about that. We're going to probably nerd out about that way more than we probably should. And of course, we're going to cover the latest in Grey Noise tags and SysAkev releases. So it's going to be a really great episode. Not nearly as good as last week because I'm here, and not Emily. But you have to live with what you get. Before I talk to my co-hosts, I'm really worried, and I need to get this out there. If anybody has seen this man, please contact me, or please contact us. Glenn wasn't here last week. He is not here this week. We've last seen him. He was in the Caribbean, doing boating things. So, and like there's a reward for information. So like we'll gladly give you like $5. It's Canadian, because I mean it's Glenn. So, but if you have anything, just please let us know. Because like
Is
we're missing
Glenn
this poor man.
Canadian?
Glenn is not Canadian. I'm just not willing to give like $5.
Oh, oh. Well, thoughts and prayers
I
for
mean,
Glenn.
I mean, $5 is $5, Kimber.
I'm concerned. He's lost. He's gone. Yeah, you're not. So
Aha! Wait a minute. I think we have a spotting. I mean, it's a LinkedIn user, so it could be someone impersonating. How dare you impersonate Glenn, whoever you are? That's just so
that is
mean. We're missing our compatriot, and like that's just terrible. All right, so let's get some background music going on here for. I don't think anyone recognize it. Probably not.
I'm
There's
waiting.
lots of things start off with this. Yeah.
I'm stumped. It
Elevator
feels like
music?
Well, there are normal lyrics to it. So this will become clear why I chose "Ink" by Coldplay in a second.
oh
For
yeah, I would have
everybody.
never gotten that.
Yeah, I told you it's a 10-year-old song, and I'm an old guy. So it's great to be back with you two. First of all, I totally missed being there last week, but I heard the entire episode whilst I was driving in Connecticut, and yes, that does mean I was interacting with the YouTube text box while I was driving, but don't yell at me for that. I was just talking. It was just typing for me. I wasn't actually typing, but promise.
We need to have more girl power episodes.
You do. It was a really, really good episode. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoy
that's
talking about tech things solely with women. It's a really interesting experience. It's very
Well, I mean,
rare.
I mean, you were also coherent, unlike when Glenn and I are here, so that was great. On top of that, so
That is also true.
yeah. I am going to start with Himija for this question because the question was her idea. Himija, if you had to pick a symbol to put on your head as a tattoo, what would said symbol be?
So in this economy, I would do a QR code and like lease it out to people who wanted to use it for like advertising space. And then I could change the link, or I could like do something with that.
Wow, the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well over at Census. This is great.
Or if I'm feeling particularly evil later in life, I can just distribute malware that way. And I think that'll be a great idea.
That is very clever.
Brilliant. It's brilliant.
The hustle is real.
What about you, Bob?
Kimber. No, I'm going to go Kimber first. Kimber.
Okay.
So Kimber, what would you put right there in the forehead?
There's this Dr. Seuss book called The Sneetches, and
Yeah.
like it's a classic Dr. Seuss book about, I don't really know. I'm going to be honest. I have no clue what The Sneetches is about. Like, my kid brain did not interpret it in any meaningful way, but I really loved the idea of being a star-bellied Sneetch. I thought that was the coolest thing. So I wonder if being like a star four-headed human would
I
hit
like
the
it.
same. I don't know. And I don't want a logo. I don't want anything that can be associated with a company. Like, Kimber can't be bought, unfortunately. There's a lot of me that says I'll go live with the non-forehead tattooed people, like out in the forest, so that you can't get us. But if I had to, if I wanted to, star forehead.
And this niches, I may have read that book recently to somebody. Is all about in groups and out groups. So it's
Yeah.
basically helping kids deal with the whole in group out group thing, and it sticks with you apparently because Todd still remembers Stars Upon Mars. So that's
Stars
pretty cool.
upon Mars.
Hey, Overwatch. None of this is possible without our amazing Overwatch. Overwatch did an amazing job last week again. And what would you put on your forehead, Ashley? I wrote this for him and she said hers. I like hers better. So smart money. Okay, so she's just gonna steal. Maybe a QR code. There you go. I love it. Boy, the
Dog
entrepreneurial
video
thing.
QR code.
Yeah,
That's
this is
way more
great.
wholesome.
I like the playlist idea. A QR
Dang.
code with a playlist I can keep updated with my favorite songs. Like, make it useful. Yeah.
Or people are like, tell me about yourself. And you're like, just scam me. I don't want to repeat it again. I'm so tired. Yes, I have 2 siblings.
Wow.
Your business card, just the
Yeah.
QR scan.
Right there.
Yeah.
So mine's easy because not that anyone can actually tell because it didn't come out the way he was hoping, but like my grandson tells me what to do and I just do it. So he made me color my hair like my daughter did. It's not as purple as we're hoping, but he also loves temporary tattoos and he has a bunch of dinosaur tattoos on him. So I would put a dinosaur, whatever dinosaur he told me to put on my head, I would put right there and wear it permanently.
That's so cute. What's his favorite
'Cause
dinosaur?
It's a good question. He has like a lot of dinosaur tattoos, so I don't think he has a fave, which is interesting.
Dinosaurs in general are the fave, not a particular one. That's good. Equality.
Cool. Absolutely. And we are going to move right along. And one thing I appreciated last week that Emily did that I have been forgetting to do now that we don't have slides is mention the fact that we do actually have landing pages in podcasts. So awesome job on that, Emily. And we do have one, stormwatch.ing, so stormwatching with a period before the I, or you can just go to Grey Noise and find the Stormwatch link on there or right there. And you can get all the previous episodes, like subscribe, mash all the things, because that helps the algorithm do whatever algorithms do these days. And we're going to kick right into it with the update on the Columbus hack that caused all sorts of consternation, and everyone did a great job talking about last week. The request for the restraining order has actually been granted by the judge, which is terrible. I'm gonna actually get up here real quick. And the city council wasn't actually around when they did all that when the mayor and the other folks did all the things they did, and the city council came back and they're like, oh yeah, like string them up because I guess that's what we do now. We don't actually care about justice or anything. We just want to like get revenge for people that tell about the things that we're doing badly. Not crazy about that, and just really wanted to quickly just update people on that one. And I have something to show in a minute. But your reaction to the actual restraining order actually being held up, like it's actually a thing.
Not surprised. Like, I don't know. It's very
I was hoping a little surprise would be there because justice and
No,
everything.
but like, it's so disappointing, I guess. Just that because I still don't see what they gain by doing that. Like, I don't see the benefit of doing that at all.
I feel like they kept it up because now there are something like 3 lawsuits against them. So it might be tit for tat type of
Yeah,
thing, but I
it's
don't
not
know.
great. Yeah, it's not
Not
great.
looking great for them.
So I want the one thing that also has so Columbus slash Ohio in general is taking this like really seriously, and one of the lead reporters used Timeline JS to make a really pretty great timeline about this thing, and I didn't give the Overwatch this link because I'm a terrible host.
This is like the
So
best
I
thing
will.
about this whole situation is this sick timeline.
So that's the timeline for it. So you can go through there, and they're going to keep updating it with all of the things that are happening there. And I guess this is going to be a thing now that we're going to have probably someone battling in court over whether he's allowed to do more of these things. And the other thing that wasn't around last week is there's been an open letter that's been signed by a whole bunch of cybersecurity professionals, including someone that is like our text co-host, Todd, on here. And I've asked to have my name put on here too because like I kind of believe that we shouldn't be doing this to researchers for any reason at all out there. And so if you want to go grab that, I will grab this link for you too and put this into the show thing.
It's important because it like sets a precedent of it being reasonable to do that when there is no rhyme or reason to it. Like there is nothing for the city to gain from it. Like unless somebody can present like a wonderful argument to me on this, like wouldn't working with the researcher be of more benefit than punishing the researcher? Like that's what I keep getting hung up on. Is you could have just
Yeah,
worked with
so
this guy. Like he's not
I
malicious as far as we can tell.
I'm actually really glad that you went there because I obviously I couldn't like call in to because we don't have like phone numbers and stuff. But ooh, we should get phone Overwatch. We should get phone numbers. It could be a call-in show. It could be amazing. No, all right, we won't do that.
No.
No,
Why
no, we won't
not?
do that.
You're right. Glenn would abuse it.
Yeah, Glenn would totally abuse it. They have to do certain things. There are certain steps they have to follow. There are certain reporting requirements that the city has to do if indeed there was an exposure, like it wasn't all like garbled data and encrypted and you couldn't get out. Like they basically lied, which is what they did to try to get out of having to fulfill a whole bunch of reporting requirements that they now kind of have to fulfill, which is why they're ticked off at this guy. One thing I don't my I am mystified by this because like everybody's eventually going to get ransomware because it's a ransomware attack and they work really well because we don't have great defenses against them because it works well because that's why they do it. It happens. It literally happens, and, like, it's not great, but, like, it happens, just suck it up, clean it up, move it on. The one thing in the story that, is also been updated is they actually were really impacted, like, it wasn't the fact that all this stuff got taken away, that there was, like, something like 220 applications that were impacted, and they've only gotten, like, 3/4 of them restored. So there's like 40 some apps that go for that do services across the city of Columbus still don't work, which is like, okay, this is a really big lie. So I don't know why this judge did what they did. One of our folks is the judge under the age of 75. It's like, well, I mean, I get it. If I don't think age has anything to do with it. I think like the executive and judicial branch collusion to try to not be embarrassed is probably part of it than anything else.
My favorite part of that timeline is the one where they say the parking app was not affected.
Wait a minute. We have an actual Glenn sighting. Why make a bad story good when you can make it? Wow. Okay. All right. Glenn, you also don't get the $5 Canadian just for turning yourself in. Sorry, that's not going to happen. So nice try, though. Nice try for that.
Nice try.
I want to bring up one quote that I missed when we first talked about this that was in the timeline that the mayor originally said, what like his justification for like after the leak came out, he downplayed it by saying something like, "Oh, when the ransomware gang tried to auction it, they failed, like no one bought it, and so that means that the data isn't valuable and it's not a danger." Which, I mean, and he repeated it like multiple times at press conferences.
Yeah,
So,
it's crazy. It's just crazy.
Wild.
So
Don't
I'm gonna
be
keep my
Columbus.
eye. I actually have a watch on the JSON file that backs the timeline JS thing that the reporter made. So when that changes, I am going to keep an eye on it. We may do an update on this moving forward as well to see how this progresses, and I hope it makes a turn for the better. But it's just not great right now. It is just not great, and I hope nobody else in the country, no other city or township in the country, emulates what. Don't be like Ohio, everybody. Don't be like. Actually, in lots and lots of ways right now, don't be like Ohio in a lot of ways. Um, we are going to jump into our next story. This next story is an homage to Emily, who also, as you notice, is not here today because she has other commitments besides Stormwatch, which it's hard to believe you'd have other commitments, but I had them and Glenn has them, so I guess it's okay. This is I don't need so Texas Dow Employees Credit Union, TDECU. So I'm going to try not to say those letters because it just takes way too long. They are a victim of MOVEit. Yeah, MOVEit, the breach that keeps on giving. And I believe everybody, but especially Emily, has been saying like we're not gonna see the end of MOVEit for a while, and she has been right, and this is more proof of it. If you kind of read through it, they had a third party, which is not named in the actual the document that they put on the web here, and they said that third party was breached on May 31st, 2023, like as part of the initial wave of the MOVEit attacks. And in July of this year, the credit union figured out that there was compromised data and it contained personal information and yada 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 that we talked about in the beginning of the show. And they're going to start notifying people, or they started notifying people on August 23rd. And I'm gonna just talk to you guys about this because how does it take 13 months? I believe that Emily expressed in the channels that we hang in some serious incredulity for that amount of time. And I don't, given all the other stuff going on with Move It, how did this get by for 13 months? Anybody have an idea?
The the ever expanding onion of services that people use and the untangling of having to figure out how those trickle down and affect sensitive industries. Like credit unions are really interesting to me because they're often very very small. Like they're very hyper regional, like they just they're for like this one particular employees of something or people in a certain state. Like they maybe have an IT department if we're lucky, if they don't contract it out. Like this comment from Justin, have you met credit union IT managers? No, I'm not convinced they exist. So I think it's like so interesting that when the Move It vulnerability came out, like there were some people that knew what that software was, but a lot of us were like, what does that do? So
Yeah, and in this case, it was like a third party vendor that used MoveIt that the integrated with the credit union. So, but that still doesn't really, I mean, to put some dates to this, they were notified by the third party vendor at the end of last May. And then apparently they did an investigation to just figure out like how bad it was and who it affected. And that ended this past July. So year-long investigation, which I believe that it takes that long, but like the notification should have come way before.
yeah. And that's what ultimately like makes this story particularly interesting is that the dwell time in the system or is that just how long it took to notify? Like when did things actually get remediated here? And cuz that wasn't clear to me from the notice.
Yeah,
Right.
did
And
they?
yeah, this could have been on so we aren't assuming it was the credit union that took this long to do the discovery. It could have been the third party that they're not mentioning that it took them this long to identify that as well too. So could and depending on what that third party did, they may not have been under the constraints that a lot of others were too. You should follow up and see if you were affected by Move It. But with all the headlines that made it to actual real news sites and not just cyber news or IT news sites, I still find it difficult to believe that someone in an organization wasn't like, "Hey, were we affected by Move It?" Because like everybody was kind of affected by Move It, and I don't understand how you could just let yourself just be absolved of not caring about it. I don't know.
Is there anyone that Move It didn't affect? like 2024 is so the year of like everybody just kind of giving up on caring about their data being breached. Like even the normies like don't give a dang anymore. Like I
Yeah, because I like to that point, like I'm actually thinking that sometime in December we should do a look back at the giant breaches of just this. Just forget like move it in last year, just this year, because there are a lot of them. Just to remind everybody, like AT&T, the AT&T breach was a thing, is a thing. The Snowflake breach was a thing, is a thing. There's still no mandatory 2FA
yeah.
on Snowflake either. And I could go on and on. Like we've had massive breaches this year, and whether it's been dwarfed by other types of news or everyone just has fatigue and there's nothing and you can't do anything about it anyway. So I think to your point, Kimber, we're at the point where just everyone's done. We just don't care. It's all out there. Just take our
Yeah.
info.
You can't get a new social security number unless you can prove that it's like problematic. Like you have to have your social security number doing some really like malicious things in order to get a new one. Like they don't just reissue it.
Okay, this is great, Philip. The Ohio judge was apparently not affected by MOVEit, so that's mean, but great. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a solution for this. I do feel bad for everyone impacted by the credit union one and all the other credit unions that were also impacted, as Justin like was telling us in chat. So
Yeah, I
this
guess I
is
just
this
worry
is
that
just
like the fatigue is going to create this environment where it's kind of like crime-ridden neighborhoods where like the city governments are just kind of like, well, we're just going to make that the crime-ridden neighborhood and like that's just where all the crime is and it's okay for like all of that stuff to happen down there. We just know that like we're not going to respond unless it's something really bad kind of stuff. Like it used to be a big deal to have your car broken into, and now in a lot of cities you just fill out a form when your car gets broken into. Like I'm very curious how this affects response, I guess, is what I'm thinking. Like just the overwhelm of all the breaches.
Despite regulations, galore for if you're in this industry, you must do this. If this happens to you, like the SEC doubling down on a lot of the the material things for breaches. Does it actually matter? Is anyone actually going to like
Well,
bother doing that? And if you're not in a regulated environment, are you going to do anything at all?
I guess if you think about it, like probably there was a time when we informed the FBI or whoever about all these breaches, and now they're just saying do an SEC filing, which is purely associated with finances, in my opinion, right? Like the reason for doing that is financial. So that's kind of the same thing with the car, like the analogy of the car break-in is like the reason you have to file the form is so that you can get proof to make a claim with your insurance. Like it's not because the police are like adding it to a list to go hunt your shit down. Like I think so. I think we're just kind of like in the same situation with these breaches at this point is like, well, that sucks. Like your stuff got stolen, but there is no insurance against this except providing the identity protection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and actually, as Philip noted, we were talking about maybe just lock your credit and only unlock it when you absolutely need to get new credit. Um,
Always keep your
I
credit
I
locked.
I think I want to take it one step further. Shouldn't this be now the default at all of the credit places? Like, shouldn't like at this point it's so bad they should switch like give people like 90 days notice and we're freezing we're locking everything and you have to deliberately unlock it for anything to actually happen credit wise. The thing is like it isn't just credit, and I'm going to take that down. It isn't just credit that has the problem with this. There are cases where the identity theft can be used to, as an example, like have your kid be on someone else's tax return and they file it first. That happened internally to someone here,
Social
and
security
that
fraud.
yeah, all that stuff too. So it isn't like credit is one side of it, and all this information can be easily used to do other types of fraud as well too. It is harder to protect from that, and potentially even more disruptive than just some fraudulent credit stuff happening to you as well. So
I could
Yeah,
rant forever.
cynicism is really dangerous, but I do think with this specific type of data, having it's not if, it's when it's going to get Breach is actually, it's just the move now. We need an internet Batman.
Internet Batman.
Let's go to.
Bob, let's
We are
talk about
cranking.
something else.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about. I think we're
Let's
gonna
talk
hang on
about
this.
computers, Bob.
Yeah. So we are gonna bring it up. Actually, this is actually a great positive forward step that's gonna do some good. It's almost weird that we're talking about that on Stormwatch. But so the White House last week, the Office of the National Cyber Director released a roadmap for enhancing internet routing security. And before we go into some of the additional things about that, I was hoping that maybe Kimber, you would walk us through what BGP is and what BGP security means.
Ah, I'm going to give the very basic baby version of BGP stands for Border Gateway Protocol, which is the backbone of the internet. It is the thing that tells all of the different internet providers and all of the different people who own different ASNs what ASN to yeet their traffic at. And it's it's a system that in the past has relied on consensus. So you get a bunch of routers in a room and all of them have to agree upon what direction to throw the traffic. And it kind of relies upon like the loudest character in the room. uh, and you can see how that system is very flawed, because if I can just yell louder than everyone else, I am going to get the traffic thrown whatever direction I want it to be thrown. So there's a lot of nuance in that, obviously, but the way that we've introduced security into this system is by having our PKI, which is certificate based. Like, I trust you, you trust me, so I'm only going to listen to your yelling as long as you have our trust agreement in hand. Bob, is there anything to add on to that? Does that analogy track, or
I
Himajah?
think it does. I think it does. The one thing I will put on here, and I'm say something nice about Cloudflare, which is unusual for me. They have a great graphic on this. They actually do some. They have a lot of tools to help organizations monitor BGP like hijacks that happen. This the infographic that we have up here is showing a freeway, and basically it's the equivalent of someone like making a sign that says, "Hey, this is the exit that you want for Berkeley," and when actually the Berkeley exit is the one way, like down the road from there. It just causes you to go through something else to have traffic hit, and it's really it's disruptive, but it's also potentially really bad, especially if you don't have. And I can't believe I'm saying this, especially if you don't have encryption on with the stuff that you're actually communicating with. Although, so what I wanted to ask you for this one, since you've got a lot like you understand this really really well. What happens? And this is me, yes, half dissing encryption to a degree, but because encryption is involved and there's trust involved and there's certificates involved, that means there's things like certificate expiries and just needing to trust things and an entry needing to be in certain places at certain times. And what happens when all of that information or some of that information goes away
Traffic goes
or goes bad?
no traffic, or that introduces a vulnerability, right? So when you have authenticated systems, like HTTPS like introduced some new concerns into our lives of like it's exactly the same concept of like, if your certificates expire, your traffic's going to get messed up. So if your RPKI expires, traffic's going to get messed up. But what is the current number? It's something like 58% of the internet is running secured in this way. So
Yeah,
there's,
thanks to some very large carriers
yeah,
that enabled this in the past year and a half.
Amazon.
It's
Uh,
helped a lot.
yeah, Amazon is like leading the way in IPv4 on this. IPv6 is kind of an interesting space where I think this is just the default in IPv6 at this point. Um, it's one of those questions of like, are we ever going to be 100% like HTTPS, or like, are we ever going to be 100% RPKI'd in our BGP? There's a lot of acronyms flying around here. But I like it's one of those things where we're never going to be completely secure on it. So we're always going to have to watch that less secure mechanism to figure out um, where all the bad things are happening. But there's like, I if you're not like, if you're not looking at things on the grander scale, if you're kind of in the method in the habit, I guess, of only looking at your enterprise, like you probably don't know that like BGP hijacks are happening like fairly frequently. The amount of them is going down, but there's like it happens in the spicier regions. I would have to say, like, it is just what makes sense to me.
Yeah, so I grabbed some data from BGP Watch. If and I will get a link up to I think we have a link to them, but I'll get a link to people. Like we'll make sure they're in the show notes if not. And what I've up on the screen right now is all of the daily BGP hijacks events since 2023, minus 1 day because it made the chart unreadable. Because it went to like 2,000 BGP hijacks in 1 day, and there's not really a day without there's almost not really a day without a BGP hijack happening somewhere. Now, some of these are accidental because you
Exactly.
can be just a completely incompetent network administrator
Well, no,
and
you don't even have to be incompetent to do that. Like, you can just be having number dyslexia. Like, you could just be having a bad day. Like, it's sensitive. Networking
it
is a
is.
sensitive topic. You don't even have to be a dummy to like mess it up.
I mean, we do believe one of the noise storms we experienced earlier in the year was because somebody at a very central point on the internet made a really bad mistake in BGP and did some
Yeah.
bad things for a
You
while.
guys have all kinds of noise storm theories. I'm just like, guys, it's BGP. Let's
The other thing I did is crunch some more numbers. I need to get over to the screen to do that. And it's these this is harder to see because it does scroll off the screen, but the top 25 attacks across these the 25 sources for these attacks across 2023 to now account for 50% of all the attacks. Brazil is notorious. The networks in Brazil are notorious for doing this. There's a lot of networks in the US that also do this. And unsurprisingly, like Iran, Turkey, and some other ones are also involved in this one. But there isn't really a country without an ASN that hasn't had a trip up
Yeah.
when it comes to this. And one reason why like I brought up the data for this is to reinforce what Kimber was saying. Like this is real. Like one reason why the federal government cares about this, one reason why the White House is having this policy. I believe they want to have 60% of all the federal routable networks under RPKI by the end of the year. This doesn't apply outside. They can't, like, they really can't tell everyone else what to do, but they can sure as heck make the government network safer, and that will help make other things safer as well. So that they're real, like they're defending against the real things that happen, whether accidental or not. And in a lot of cases, they're not accidental too. Like these are some deliberate efforts to route traffic so that people can capture it, do stuff with it, even if there is TLS happening on there as well.
For
One thing
me,
I didn't. Yeah, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, go
Sorry.
ahead.
Okay.
Um, for me, it just shows the validity of the fact that like we see continual network disruptions, like when um government unrest is popping off. Like you can see how many Brazil results are in there, and in that data set, like a lot of them are Brazil based, and we know that there's a lot of unrest happening in Brazil right now. And it's like one of the things that we see as a precursor to that, and to just any kind of spiciness, right? And Glenn throwing in the chat, like, if we know when hijacks happen, how come we don't alert on it or like hear more about it? And I personally think that this is because not a lot of people understand it, but also because it takes a while this is my personal opinion. It takes a while in the incident response of it to figure out, number one, was it an accident or was it on purpose? And then if it was on purpose, what were they trying to hide? And what did they actually accomplish? So you have to go downstream to see why was that routing changed. There was a recent attack in 2022. It's cryptocurrency based, so like it's barely an attack to me. That's like robbing a bank. Barely an attack, right? But that was the goal of changing the BGP announces, was to just steal some cryptocurrency. So like it took a minute to figure that out, but it was fairly obvious, like based upon the ASNs that it was happening on. So the more particular the ASN, like the ownership of the network, the easier it is to suss out like why a BGP hijack happens. But when it's something like a BGP hijack on a Comcast route, like that could be anything.
What I was gonna ask is, Himija, do you know, because we didn't do this in pre-show, do you know if, like, the BGP infrastructure is anything that Census monitors? And then, like, I don't recall seeing anything directly in the actual data that I poke at, but I don't poke at BGP stuff in Census ever. Is any of this covered in there? Do you do any inventorying to see if this is like I know you're not monitoring for it, but is there anything related to this in Census that you guys are working with?
Not really. It's
Okay.
definitely something we've been asked about, but that's just not what our magnifying glass shows. Um, as far as like adoption though, something that I've been thinking about is so like implementing kind of RPKI and filtering and stuff is pretty straightforward, at least as far as I've heard. But um, is it harder to like, is it harder for folks who don't implement it? Like, have we created some friction there similar to, like, untrusted certs and things like that? Or is it just besides, the risk of hijacks and stuff, is there any actual incentive to implement it?
Actually, like, I'm gonna ask that question in a different way to Kimber. So, what if you are what if you're a downstream, for lack of a better way, client of a larger ISP? So you're like an enterprise that is just taking routes from AT&T. You obviously have some BGP on your perimeter as well too, but you're a leaf node in this whole network thing. Is it important for that leaf node to care about and deal with the whole security and safety of this higher integrity BGP, or is it less important for them to deal with that and just leave it up to the more carriers that do more pairing and things like that to do that?
I don't know if there's an official like rules answer to this or like a RFC answer to this, which is kind of what I like to refer to, especially in networking. It's like, what are the actual computer rules of this? But my opinion based thought on it is, I would think you would need to care even more if your upstream is or isn't. And a lot of networking things happen by consensus because that's how routing works. So it's where those pressures are like pushing up against each other of just like, hey, HTTPS only works if we're all doing it. So RPKI is like the same concept. And I think that it's really easy to present that to the user when you're thinking about like websites and stuff, but like I don't know how you'd present that to the user because users shouldn't care about the backbone routing of the internet. I'm just a freak who like really likes to think about this stuff. But I will say um there's the ISP for NOAA, the National Oceanic, Atmospheric, etc. The weather people, effectively, and it's called NWAVE. And NWAVE has published this document. They've been kind of the leader in displaying like what the right way to roll this out is, and like what are kind of all of the rules, because that they really care about like having a solid, reliable, trustable network because there's so many things that rely on the NWAVE like ISP. So they have a whole playbook like walking through all of this stuff, and that's the entire intention is like to get societies like internet to all of the internet like partnerships. NIST, I think, even references this document of just like the standards on translating over. Yeah.
And Glenn mentioned something earlier. Actually, let me try to put up here. If we know when hijacks happen, and the we is interesting. I'm going to put up a link to Cloudflare's radar in a second. So we already have one for BGP Watch, which is kind of a more globally focused than what Cloudflare is doing for folks. Why don't we alert on it more, hear more about it? Well, I actually when I was on that horrible what is now the horrible site X, There were a couple places you could sign up to see when BGP hijacks happen. I used to collect it for a while, and some of those get aggregated. BGP Watch has filled in some of those gaps as well too. But you actually have to be watching for that and care, like watch and care. And as we all know, organizations like forget ISPs, like that's their thing if they do that. But if you're just some organization, you're just trying to get stuff done. You're trying to sell stuff. You're trying to shill stuff. You're trying to whatever. Yeah, you may care a little bit about that, but like it's unlikely that you would have that level of networking expertise in your organization anymore, given like the degrading state of enterprise IT, which it does trickle down into networking layer. You may not even have people that understand things at a more at a level of depth that isn't, well, the ISP told me to do this, so I did this, and that's fine. And like then you don't care about it anymore. 'Cause monitoring it is going to be way off of their radar to do that.
It would be interesting to see, like, I think I see this often in some incident response reports that they'll include some kind of notice of there was a hijack. I think like that's always interesting. If there's an opportunity that like, oh, this could have been caused by BGP hijack, like it's important to mention it
Yep.
because
So I
it
dropped.
costs just like it costs a lot to do a BGP hijack. It's not like a simple thing.
Right, and there is some proximity involved, and like you're saying, being loud, but being loud in the right place is also like where you want to be able to do that too, to be able to get folks. And if you're not just doing it, if it wasn't just an accident, if it was targeted, then you really got to be deliberate about it and have the capability to actually handle the routed traffic that you're actually asking for too, which can be a bit overwhelming if you pick the wrong one, which is fun when that happens. This is a link to the Cloudflare's blog, but it has a link to their radar site as well too. If organizations can go to there if you want to be able to see more of what's happening with your organization and get some updates and basically help your thing be protected until you subscribe to that. Basically like do your own RPKI and secure your stuff a little bit better than everyone else is doing.
Buy your own ASN, be your own security.
If I lived closer to a cheaper fiber link to my house, I would seriously consider setting up an autonomous system.
Me and one of my partners talk about buying an ASN all the time, and we're just like, oh, it doesn't make financial sense yet.
It's like digital homesteading.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
It's not that bad to buy an IPv6 one, just saying. Bob, you are muted. Oh, he knows. He knows. He's pulling.
So we are going to jump right into our shameless self-promotion section. We don't have slides anymore, and we only have one blog to talk about, which is cool because it is a Vulncheck blog. Can you give us a lowdown on what Patrick has been up to lately, Kimber?
Yeah, Patrick does these monthly, I believe, where he just does a run through on what we've seen and just throws in some interesting insights about like what that really means, what kind of artifacts we pulled into that data set, and how you might think about them in terms of prioritizing your vulnerability response. So it's kind of a fun little update on what Vulncheck has been looking at and adding into our exploit intelligence. Oh, Bob, Bob,
You're
Bob.
I'm
muted.
muted. I get it. Yeah. I'm a week out of practice. I'm completely useless. It's great. So it's Patch Tuesday. Is that like a big thing at Check? Like, do you all brace for impact with Patch Tuesday, or is it like, yeah, it's Patch Tuesday?
The vibe is more Patch Tuesday.
Okay.
But I think it was really exciting when it was that IPv6 fall, and it was like, oh, is this legit? But
The thing that requires you to have like the Jenga board set up with the mousetrap thing set up to get it the perfect conditions to do. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
exactly.
Actually, I should ask this to Himage too. Do you all care a whole lot? I mean, obviously, we all sort of care about Patch Tuesday. We sort of have to because it's thrust upon us every month. But is that a big event for you all, or is it generally a nothing burger for you all?
It is an event, not a big event, but like we just like I will move things around on my calendar for it to like brace for it. But we're not like it's not a huge deal.
I do find it interesting that Glenn seems to be away from work keyboard whenever there's a patch Tuesday. Just kind
I
of
think
noticing that correlation.
he definitely plans it.
Yeah. Hmm.
Smart.
I've seen his calendar, it's marked on there.
I'm gonna have to keep a closer eye on that at review time to see what's going on there. And I want to say something also really nice about Voncheck as well, because Howdy has been working with you all to incorporate us cadre over. I think it's over 100 of your initial access um, rules, tags, whatever, into our tagging system at Gray Noise, doing some of the vetting, working with you all. Like I believe there's a couple changes yet, made just some things too. Just yeah, really high quality tags for those things, detection rules for those things, and they just went in seamlessly into our new environment that's Suricata based versus our old SQL tagging that we had out there. And this jump right here is Howdy and you guys. So I really want to shine a light on you all for that. And what I can't wait for is you have tons more rules for things that happen post exploitation and post initial access, and we're going to be there like next year ish, hopefully. So we're going to be able to incorporate more of those rules and do more of those detections, and it's going to be a pretty cool, fun time when we actually get to do that.
This is super cool. I'm definitely going to pass this along to the gang and say, look, we're making a difference. I have issued a challenge to Bob that he keep track of what Gray Noise has as unidentified traffic versus identified traffic to see if we can make like a really huge impact on that.
Yeah, and the one thing we are internally toying around with some changes to the unknown portion of what we talk about so that maybe we can make that easier to have that designation for what is truly unknown versus maybe suspicious. I I actually like I could do a writing campaign because like we do have a show and like I could use that to overrule. Like I want to call it sus, not suspicious. I want to call it sus because it's modern and cool, whatever. So like if you could like throw some love into like the Gray Noise community Slack about that, I'd appreciate that. So we could call it
Bob, I'm going to start
the
worrying when we have like Skibbity tag or Ohio tag. Like, are we
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, am I ever okay? I don't think I'm ever really ever okay.
Sigma traffic?
Please no.
I'm gonna keep this up and I'm gonna hit refresh because we can do that now because we don't rely on static slides. And okay, we have yet another image magic vulnerability.
Todd, I'm gonna
Yay.
dunk on you so hard for the image magic one. That is an 8-year-old vuln, known exploited vuln. Dunk.
It just recently got identified in something that got hit. It's legit. It's just it's image magic yawn. And
How
then
did
like
this
I
not
saw
happen before?
well, it's how did it not get reported before is probably a
Yeah,
better way to yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Well, it's because Todd wasn't there.
Oh,
Todd manages Kev with an iron fist.
ah,
That's what it is. It's all Todd.
right. Todd.
The kernel pi stack buffer corruption. I would really. This is one of those times when I really wish there was a. And here's a lot of detail about where we found this inside some like exploited network or whatever. I would have loved to have known what this was, but
Yeah.
we'll never know because they won't tell. It's not great.
TLP Red Group
And
with the Kev
yeah,
of just tell me how you found out about it. That's all I want to
yeah,
know.
I just want to know because like I do rag on the volume, the sheer incredible stupid volume of Linux kernel vulnerabilities that make it into CVE now. And this is an old one, thankfully. So like I guess this has probably been done for a while. I still want to know the attack vector and who did what, and but I guess we'll never know that. The oh wait, can we FOIA this at some point down the road, like when it doesn't matter anymore? I think we
That's
can FOIA
a
this down
really
the
good
road at some point.
idea.
Yeah.
In 20 years.
Well, I hopefully will not be doing this in 20 years. Just
Bob, I was really nervous you were going to say that you weren't going to be alive in 20 years.
no, I just hopefully I won't be. Well, I mean, I definitely won't be doing this if that is the case in 20 years, but I hopefully won't have to deal with that. And we have a sonic wall. Yes. Oh, wait, we have a firewall. We have a firewall vulnerability. Hold on. I get to do this. I never get to do this anymore. Uh, there we go. Had to do that.
That was quick.
Um,
You had that on deck.
I do have that on. I have it is right at the top of the sound effects. It's great. Um, and improper access, of course, it's improper access control. Unauthorized resources under certain circumstances may cause the firewall to crash. Yay! It's great. It's just great. Absolutely great.
Everything's great.
Everything is great. I see it in the title of the Stormwatch banner is Move It BGP and NCSC. I think that's the government one, but I also wanted to give a shout out to we talked about doing a segment on it, but we're not doing a segment. I just want to give a shout out to Ireland, who seems to be leading the way with the NCSC over there to potentially start scanning their country networks, the critical parts of their country networks, critical services, and doing really good work over there. CISA does this really well with the organizations can volunteer to be in a program with CISA to scan their networks for free. Yes, you could get CISA to help you manage the vulnerabilities in your perimeter for free. You just have to contact them, do a bunch of paperwork. And you could have a free thing for your company that will help you out and do that with CISA. So you have to volunteer. Like it's going to be not a volunteer thing over there. So just a shout out to them for being vigilant and caring deeply about making sure that their country networks are secure and their country stuff is secure over there. The NCC does a great job over there. They're great folks.
Yeah. We were
Really
gonna talk
excited
about
about
it, but
this.
then we realized it was just like too positive, the
Yeah, that's
vibe.
not our brand.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can't do that. But we can give shout outs to when they do great jobs because CISA does a great job with what they do and they're helping out with what's with the White House directive and NCC does a great job and honestly all the 5A's security centers, they're not all called but they should be. They all do really great work within their countries and partnerships across that to share information and do lots of great work. We have a lot of good happening at different levels. It's just that the bad stuff just keeps happening and gains a lot more headlines than some of the good news that happens out there.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
any parting thoughts before we sign everybody off today?
Go to the isbgpsafeyet.com website and
There you
see
go.
if your ISP implements BGP safely. That was the link you posted in the pre-show, Himoja. Made me happy.
It has a nice little animation for what a BGP hijack looks like too, which is fun.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And Glemily did I called them that the other day, so I'm gonna call them that from now on, Glemily. They are gonna be at LabsCon talking about a really cool secret project that we got working on. And I believe LabsCon is invite. I feel bad talking about LabsCon because
No.
it's invite only.
It's a
So you
wonderful
can't
conference. Hopefully it'll be recorded and we'll get to see it
no, they
eventually.
don't. No, they don't do that
They
though.
they release some of them.
They do? Okay.
You can request to be off the record entirely though. So
Okay.
Glenn and Glemily, hopefully you didn't do that.
Yeah, it would just be because it's we have found a lot of really fun things in the data. Glenn and Emily done a lot of like hard work on this because it's sifting through a lot of data and a lot of other research around this as well too. It's gonna be a great talk, and we're gonna keep doing the experiment as well too. So that, like, just stay tuned for that. So we'll get to talk about it more once they actually release all their stuff at LabsCon.
Yeah.
Dream team.
They are, absolutely. So I guess that is it for the day. So as we wrap up this episode of Grey Noise Stormwatch, remember folks, don't let your cyber defenses be a move it or lose it situation. Keep your BGP on lock and your RPKI in check because in the world of cybersecurity, it's better to be safe than RISDed. Stay vigilant, stay secure, and we'll catch you on the next transmission through the digital storm. This is the Stormwatch crew signing off. May your firewalls be strong and your vulnerabilities be few. Take care, everybody.
Bye.